How you guys doing? How you guys doing? How you guys doing? Welcome to another episode of Black People Kind of News, episode 16. Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, man. We got to talk about Joe Biden and reparations. So without further ado, guys, make sure you guys are tapping the stream to give me some likes. Make sure you guys are sharing the stream on every social media platform you have because I want to spread this news to the masses. So with that being said, let's have a discussion about reparations. We're going to talk more about Joe Biden in a second, but don't you worry. Don't you worry, we're going to have a full show this evening. So, activists split over whether reparations should go to black immigrants. This is released by the Washington Post. Now, Boston. When the city announced earlier this year that it would consider giving reparations to its black residents, it was heralded as another victory in the national movement to offer recompense for the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow segregation. The city had played a key role in financing the slave trade and was the site of fierce resistance to integration. Now, advocates said it was time to address the lingering damage. But as the mayor started choosing members for the Boston task force, the city quickly became the chief battlegrounds of an adjacent fight playing out within the black community. Should reparations programs be limited to people who can trace their ancestry back to American slavery, or should they include black immigrants who came to the country by choice? The debate highlights tensions within America's rapidly changing black community and risks fracturing a movement that is already struggling to gain mainstream acceptance. It could also shape the reach and ultimate price tag of reparations programs being developed in more than a dozen states and cities across the country. This is not going to be some kumbaya moment, said Aziza Robinson Goodnight, a Boston-based activist calling for reparations to be limited to descendants of enslaved people. We're going to have to fight, and we're going to have to make the strongest case possible, right? And here's a picture of this sister and her family. The factions are at odds over what it means to be black in America at a time when that story is rapidly changing. For most of U.S. history, nearly all black Americans could trace their ancestry back to American slavery. See, a lot of people, let me go ahead and pause there, right? I want to pause there because this is the media acknowledging something. And I want to remind you, this is the Washington Post. The Washington Post, okay? I want to highlight a sentence here, right? I want to highlight a sentence here because I want you to see this, right? I want to highlight this whole paragraph here, right? The factions are at odds over what it means to be black in America at a time when the story is rapidly changing. For most of U.S. history, nearly all black Americans could trace their ancestry back to American slavery. So at one point, we could in fact trace our lineage. The reason why I wanted to highlight that is because that's for all the people saying, well, it shouldn't be lineage based because it's way too hard to trace your lineage. That's not true. Most of us could, and we still can if we actually take the time to look. It's there. You came from somebody. Immigrants, less than 1% of the black population in the 1980s, now make up 10%. Between now and 2060, about a third of the growth in the black population will come from immigration from countries such as Jamaica and Ethiopia, according to the Pew Research Center. So again, a third of us will be immigrants in this country. But as you can see, most of us can in fact trace our lineage. So for all the people out there claiming that lie, please stop claiming that lie. We can in fact trace our lineage. We can in fact trace our lineage. So please stop telling that obvious lie. Most of us can trace our lineage. And at one point, they made up less than 1% of the black population in the 1980s, meaning before that, you were even lower. No offense. So when people come over here saying, well, we want reparations, you weren't even in this country to experience it. Now, the analogy that I use is simple. The analogy that I use is a very simple one. A very simplistic one, right? So the analogy that I use is I experienced Hurricane Hugo, right? I experienced some of the aftermath of that as a black American. Now, let's say that you turn around and you say, well, I'm also a Haitian and I experienced a hurricane too. So should I go over to Haiti and now demand hurricane relief fund, even though we experienced hurricanes in 2 different time periods? We both experienced fund, even though we experienced hurricanes in 2 different time periods. We both experienced the exact same thing, but in 2 different lands, in 2 different time periods. And you understand exactly what that's going to do. That's going to legally shoot down reparations. Everyone knows that. Everyone can see that. And I'm going to get into some stories that actually backs up what I just said. Again, the one thing about me is that when I say stuff, I bring receipts. Unlike most people. Most people, they go by their biases. Most people, they go by what they believe, their fifis, their feelings. I'm not about that. See, I believe in speaking truth to power. Rather it's the most appropriate way to do it. Rather, my way of doing it is abrasive. Truth to power is the only way I go, or I don't go at all. Truth to power is the way I go, or I don't go at all. But let's continue with this piece here. After centuries of a shared history, the Black American community is increasingly heterogeneous. And the division is showing up in attitudes about the need for reparations. According to a 2023 Washington Post Ipsos survey, 75% of Black Americans think the federal government should pay reparations, including 77% of native-born Black people compared to 59% of foreign-born Black people. When we talk about the nation's Black population, we have to understand it is one that is changing and becoming even more diverse than it already is, said Mark Lopez, Pew's director of race and ethnicity research. Immigrants are a big part of the story, and so the immigrant experience is a growing part of the experience of Black Americans today. It is a debate playing out across the country. A California panel has recommended billions in reparations for its Black residents, but it would exclude anyone who cannot trace their lineage in the U.S. back to 1900s. Smaller reparations programs launched by cities in Rhode Island and Illinois have not made that distinction, and Black immigrants are able to apply. And for many Black Americans, including myself, that is not reparations. It just isn't. Once again, guys, make sure you guys are sharing the stream. Make sure you go to every social media page and share this stream. Make sure, because again, we don't want people out there to be able to silence this kind of content because, yeah, some people may not care for this. But a lot of people need to hear this because it's the facts, it's the truth, and I'm going over news articles, and I'm also giving you my take, but you understand what I'm basing my take off of. It's not based on just my feelings. The information guides me, not my feelings. The information guides me, not my feelings. So, right now, reparations is a huge hot button topic for a lot of Americans, but especially Black Americans. Now, it's a hot topic for certain Americans, mainly because certain Americans don't want us to get it, but it's a hot button for Black Americans because we want it. The ones that can trace our lineage. Now, the ones who are outside of the lineage who may not qualify for a big state like California, yeah, they're going to go against it, especially if they live in that state. Or you have certain people who are more, let's say, of the trash panda variety. Many of them who have no link to the land here, no link to the soil here. Of course, they're going to feel that way. Of course, they're going to say, why do you need reparations? Because you don't have a link to the soil here. Yes, you might have experienced something similar in a different land, you know, your ancestors, but that doesn't mean you're going to automatically feel camaraderie with us. Prime example. Many white folks in the past would actually enslave each other. Just because one white person was enslaved, that did not stop them from enslaving others. So with that being said, what that shows you is that even a dominant white society doesn't automatically find camaraderie with someone just because of a shared experience, right? Because if that's the case, we can go talk to Ukraine. They probably have a lot to say about that right about now, right? So, under a proposal being debated in San Francisco, descendants of enslaved Americans will be given more points than others in a formula to determine eligibility for up to $5 million in payments. In Boston, the distinction could drastically impact the reach of the panel's recommendations. Black residents make up 19% of the city's overall population, but 37% of that population is foreign-born, the highest rate of any metropolitan area in the country, according to a recent study by the Boston Foundation. So basically, I'm going to make it clear. Let me just spell it out for you. If it's not lineage-based, it's not reparations. Let me explain to you in detail why I say this. If it's not lineage-based, it's not reparations. Why do I say this? Because legally speaking, that's how it's going to work. This is why reparations being race-based, the fact that they actually shot down affirmative action, that's going to play a role into what people like me have been saying for the longest time. But I want you to understand something, right? If it's not lineage-based, it's not reparations, or it's not targeting the people who were affected by our history of enslaving other human beings. That would not actually accept it. That would not correct it, right? Because there are families who are deeply entrenched here for centuries. For centuries. And if we wrong somebody else, then compensate them separately. But why is it that whenever we start talking about reparations, see, it's not just people from the African diaspora who are doing this. It's Native Americans, it's Mexicans, it's certain white people who are all trying to jump on our claim. All of them. As soon as we mention reparations for slavery, you hear Native Americans, excuse me, they were not included originally. They were not. And on top of that, many of them had us as slaves as well. So how in the world can you sit here and try to ration off our reparations to people who had us as slaves and never even compensated us for enslaving us? How, Sway? Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Because I recall, when I was first discussing reparations, do you understand what I was hearing from a lot of people in the diaspora? Oh, don't worry about it. It's not going to happen. It's a pipe dream. Now that it seems like a more and more concrete reality, because you got people out there, Texas senators making all kinds of bills to say, hey, we won't give any kind of bailouts or any kind of federal funding to any state to any state or area or city that approves reparations for slavery. That's how you know it's gonna happen. Because you don't do that if you're not scared. Oh, they scared. See? But I find it weird how you get people who at one point told us it wasn't gonna happen. We were being gaslit. It was not gonna happen. Stop worrying about it. It's a pipe dream. And now that it seems like a more concrete reality, now all of a sudden the goalposts are shifting. But boy, those goalposts is like the house from the Wizard of Oz, baby. Just flying everywhere. Because I want people who have all this stuff to say about reparations to show some consistency. First, you said it wasn't going to happen. First, you said it was a pipe dream. Now, people are trying to undermine it. Now, it's getting approval. Now, you're starting to see traction. Now, you're seeing it being polled as a high importance to Black Americans. And now, all of a sudden, you want to jump in on it now that we've done all the legwork for something that you didn't even believe in. Fascinating how that works. Fascinating how that works, huh? Funny how that works. Real strange. The Freedman perspective. For decades, activists have been calling on Boston to atone for its history of racial discrimination, from the financing of the slave trade to the bulldozing of Black communities. Boston-based traders and investors were responsible for at least 307 separate slave trade ships, according to the Equal Justice Initiative, a nonprofit that traces the history of slavery. So, once again, Boston, Massachusetts, that is a blue state. That is a northern state. So, for all these people saying, oh, man, the North, we actually freed slaves. We didn't have slaves over there. That is a load of malarkey. As Jim Crow Joe would say, malarkey. Because if that wasn't the case, then explain this last sentence. The Boston-based traders and investors were responsible for at least 307 separate slave trade ships. It sounds to me like the North was awfully invested in the selling of human beings. Appears that way. Certainly appears that way. Certainly appears that way. The movement was revived in 2020 after the unaliving of George Floyd, when activists called on local leaders to apologize for the city's racist history and establish a reparations commission. City leaders agreed. For 400 years, a brutal practice of enslavement and recent policies like redlining the busing crisis have denied Black Americans pathways to build generational wealth, secure stable housing, and live freely. Mayor Michelle Wu said in a statement announcing the reparations panel. The city soon found itself the target of a loosely organized group of activists calling themselves freedmen, waging a nationwide campaign to keep reparations programs limited to descendants of enslaved people. For the reparations movement to succeed, it can't be seen as a free-for-all for anyone. For the reparations movement to succeed, it can't be seen as free-for-all for anyone in America who identifies as Black, these activists say. There should be narrowly tailored restitution plans for those whose ancestors' labor and property were stolen, they say. Right? Right? And that's an interesting thing. Freedmen activists point to data showing that Black immigrants generally fare better than the community overall. Because when they're brought over here, many times, just like with the people who come over from India, they're picking the best of the best, right? So when you get people who are coming over here, they're not picking like every single time the poorest person. They're selecting some of these people, and you get Black folks who's like, oh, they're doing a lottery program. Would you stop? What lottery program are the Ukrainians going through right now? I was having this discussion earlier on Discord. Had a Black person say, well, immigrants are brought in by a lottery program. And I quickly retorted by saying, what lottery program are the Ukrainians going through? They're skipping the line right now. Even the Haitians are saying that. Haitians and Mexicans are saying that right now. What lottery program are they going through? Not a one. Black immigrant households have a higher medium income, $57,200, than U.S.-born Black households, $42,000, but one lower than other immigrant-led households, according to a 2022 Pew report. In Boston, the median net worth for non-immigrant Black families in the Boston area was $8, compared with $12,000 for Caribbean Black families, according to a 2015 study by the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. It's like being in an emergency room and you see somebody come in with a paper cut and somebody else who is having a heart attack, said Robinson Goodnight, a freedmen activist. Who are you actually supposed to help first? Freedmen activists are facing opposition from advocates who say the slave trade and its legacy have affected the lives of every Black person in America, no matter when their ancestors arrived, with some even calling for reparations dollars to be sent to Africa. What? See, that's why there is a freaking diaspora war. This is the part that we didn't start. That's disgusting. Are you serious? The slave masters were paid before you were even in this country. How could you fix your mouth to even say that? Yes, I agree we should compensate Africa, sure. But we're talking about a separate claim here. You can fight for both. That's what everybody in the freaking diaspora is always telling us, right? Well, you can do both. You can do both. We'll do both. Go to the U.S. government and says, hey, compensate Africa. But at the same time, pay these folks from this lineage reparations. You can do both, right? But see, that's not the point. The point is to undermine us. And that's the point of the freaking diaspora war. That's on the freaking diaspora. Not us. Not us. That's gross. We can do better than that now. I wouldn't go over to Haiti and says, hey, I deserve hurricane relief fund because I'm black and I experienced a hurricane, even though it was 2 different time periods. But hey, I'm black too. So give me some of that hurricane relief funding. I saw the aftermath of Hurricane Hugo damage some of my family's homes. Shouldn't I get some hurricane relief fund? And you would say, wait a minute, but you saw Hurricane Hugo in a completely different time period. What does it matter? It happened. I'm black. I experienced it. Pay me. But see, it don't work that way, do it? It don't work in the opposite direction when it comes to other people in the African diaspora. It only works when it comes to us. See, that's why we have a diaspora war. The disrespect that people refuse to call out on their side. Whenever a black person in America does any kind of crime, like in Chicago, no one bothers to ever make the freaking distinction between lineage, right? We just got to take everybody's trash, right? Right? But say I go over to Jamaica and I commit a crime. You don't think they're going to make a distinction? Oh, he came from America. He ain't from around here. And I wish somebody would fix their mouth to freaking lie about that. I wish somebody would. You know they would. If I go over to the African continent right now and I do some nonsense, they're going to make that freaking distinction. He ain't from here. Hell, we even do that right here in the freaking States right now. You get somebody who come over from Philadelphia and come over to Compton doing some nonsense, they are quick to freaking distinguish. He ain't from around here. That's where you get terms like, whose man's is this? He ain't from around here. See? Black immigrants need to understand that we love you, but when it comes to anything that we want, why are you always in the mix? If I can't come over to your countries and ask for certain handouts, goodies, and benefits and make it make sense because I'm black too, what makes it okay for you to do that? See, when you pose it like that, that's when people start shifting the goalposts. Oh, yeah, xenophobic. Shut up. No, you're just ignorant. We have our own separate fight and struggle here. We've been fighting white supremacy 10 toes down for hundreds of years. Even fighting it while being slaves. Escaping, slave revolts, you name it. Underground Railroad, you name it. The thing that people fail to understand is that this is a simple claim that goes back to a particular people. Yes, you may be black like them, but if I get slapped in the face in Ghana, right, and you get slapped in the face in freaking America, I'm not going to go over to America and Ghana and says, I want to be compensated for both things. Or if I'm in a bar and someone French assaults me and then a British guy assaults me, right? I'm not going to go over to France and demand payment for both the French and the British guy. If this country has wronged you in any kind of way, you demand that claim, but this one is ours. It belongs to us. It's for a specific event. That's it. We're not saying no one else deserves reparations in a separate claim. We're not saying that at all. But we got to get our paper for our claim for what happened to us. For what happened to us. See, I want some people to understand, I don't care who you date. I don't care what you find yourself in. I don't care what your political party is. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, transhuman. I don't care what you are. What I care about is what you believe when it comes to doing right by our lineage. See, there's a whole lot of people from my lineage that I don't like. That I've been public about that I don't like. But when it comes to them on reparations, I can respect their positions, even though I don't like them. Because if you ask most of us who are from the lineage, our the vast majority of Black Americans who can trace their lineage, the vast majority of us, we are saying cut the check, not because we just want money. See, Democrats and people who are Republicans, they are opposing us, some of them for different reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is a silly one. You just want money. You just want money. No, we just want the same thing that everybody else got. See, the thing about it is Black Americans for the longest time was quiet about it. Up until like the 60s, 70s. When you got MLK, that brother is the truth. He came out and he started talking about reparations, and then that got us to actually talking about it, right? All of us. Because it's what we're owed. But I want you to understand something, right? This whole talk about reparations, it is something that is deeply entrenched in Black culture, right? Because beyond slavery, beyond the brutality, beyond chaining us up, beyond throwing us in cages, beyond making us work sun up to sundown, the one thing that we hold a generational grudge over is us never being compensated for that. Because you want to know why? We got to go by the White House. We got to look at the railroads. We got to look at the banking system that we built. Do you understand how insulting it is to have to see the things that our people built that we get no payment for? We get no benefit from. And then what makes it worse is that people do everything in their power to keep us in a small position, to economically deprive us. And for what? Because those same people have the same generational animosity, except those people are the white supremacists. But only one side has been compensated. The slave masters got paid. There are people who were paid because they enslaved us. I want you to take a moment to think about that for a second. I don't think many Black Americans really pause to think about that for a second. People were given reparations, slave masters were given reparations because they lost revenue because they had to free us. I want you to think about that for a second. Someone paid a person, said, hey, I'm sorry, here's some money because you can't have your slave no more. You can't deprive this human being of his liberty and his freedom no more. I'm going to pay you now for that. Do you understand the levels of depravity you're dealing with there? See, it doesn't matter what time period you find yourself in. You could see the condition those slaves were in. You could see the condition those slaves were kept in. You could see the condition that many of them ended up in after the Civil War. You're talking about one of the largest refugee crises that happened right here on this soil after the Civil War. One of the largest ones ever. And yet we still survive because, once again, we are survivors. We adapted. We overcame. And even after we tried to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps as we watched slave masters be compensated for owning us, you then burn down every single Black Wall Street. There wasn't just one. There was multiples all over the country. Rosewood. I mean, there was a lot of them. You burned them all down. So not only did you not spend any money to compensate the people who built your banks, who built your railroads, who built the prison infrastructure, who built the law enforcement infrastructure, who were your first cowboys, built the White House, invented so many inventions, the people who did all that, you not only didn't compensate them, you compensated slave masters. And then when the people pulled themselves, when they defied the odds and still recovered without reparations after being former enslaved refugees, you then burn down their towns and their businesses. And now you have the nerve and the audacity to have Black immigrants come over here, some of them, not all, to say, hey, why can't you pull yourself up by the bootstrap? You don't know our story to even fix your mouth to say that. How dare you? And it's not just them. No, I'm not going to just jump on them. It's also the dominant white society. How in the world can you fix your mouth when you were paid? Not only did you make profit off of the backs of my people, but you were paid because you did that and had to let us go. You know, see, people, when they discuss these issues, they don't really, you know, because some of these issues are mentioned so often, we don't really take the time to pause to appreciate what we're actually discussing here. You are discussing the people who have fought in every major conflict and were the deciding factors between this country winning and losing, from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War. I mean, wars, just name it. Just name it. Distinguished service members, distinguished architects, distinguished inventors, distinguished engineers, distinguished orators, distinguished politicians, distinguished judges, lawyers, you name it. You take those same people, you take their descendants, who are now hearing about what people before them had to go through, and how people who are to their left and to their right, who may be a little bit of a lighter shade, how they got a hand up. See, it wasn't just what happened during slavery. It was mentioned by Martin Luther King Jr. He talked about it. He spoke on it. He said you had white farmers who were given land, who were given education, right? So, you know, you got to think about things in context. You got to think about things in context, man. In context. You know? And we're going to go through some comments here. Thank you. Respect to everyone in here listening to this truth and learning. TikTok saying your account is suspended. I can't promote your live. Oh, no. I'm good. I'm good. Thank you to everybody who's been sharing. Thanks to everybody who's been listening. But we're gonna move on with the show, man. We're gonna actually get into some more deeper, heavy content, man. And it's gonna be linked to all this, man. I want to have a deep discussion, right, about these things. So I want you guys to make sure you're sharing the content. Make sure you guys are leaving the content wherever you can. So for the next story, we're gonna discuss exactly what we were just talking about. Now, this is interesting, right? This is going to be fascinating because the Supreme Court's affirmative action decision also closes the door on race-based reparations. So, for the longest time, okay, hold on. Cody Hill 870. Quick question: do you have any updates on the New Mexico State police officer charged with that one particular crime? I don't right now. I will have a live, maybe a Church of ACAB a little bit later, but I will definitely discuss that if I see any more updates. But back to the main story, and thank you so much for the follow, much appreciated, and welcome to the family. The Supreme Court's affirmative action decision. The Supreme Court's affirmative action decision also closes the door on race-based reparations. So I want to have a discussion on this. So for the longest time, people like myself and many others, we were saying that if you make reparations race-based, right? Well, the problem is making it race-based means that it would easily be shot down in court. You know, many of us were saying that for the longest of times. And you had people out there saying, well, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. Well, now you're seeing more and more that it is true. And what California did is very, very important because they made it lineage based. And a lot of these things that are race based, like the one in Boston, those can be challenged in court now because of what happens with this particular court decision with the Supreme Court. In one of its final rulings of the term, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down race-based admissions for colleges and universities, just as we at Project 21 had urged it to do in its amicus brief. Wow. So the Hill is obviously a little bit more right-wing. But again, I wanted to pull this from a right-wing source and not necessarily a source that will be pro my opinion. Because again, I want to discuss things and discuss the reason why people here might be wrong. In a 6-3 decision, the court held that Harvard University's and the University of North Carolina's admissions process violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Chief Justice John Roberts' majority opinion explains that the Constitution does not allow admissions policies that single out a particular race for either an advantage or disadvantage. So basically, they put down race-based admissions to colleges. So once again, how does that affect race-based reparations? How? Well, let me show you how. Let's get down to that part. Government payments made based on someone's race, also known as reparations, fail this same common sense test, right? Reparations advocates publicly call for governments at the local, state, and even federal level to make payments with taxpayer dollars only to Black or African American individuals who descended from slaves. Those of all other races would be ineligible. That means that a government-funded reparations policy would use race to the detriment of some and the benefit of others, whether that policy proposes paying $1.2 million per recipient, such as the plan California has been considering, or the $25,000 per Black resident that Evanston, Illinois agreed to pay last month. It is a clear violation of Roberts' rules and the principle of ensuring colorblind laws and government programs. Now, here's why that's wrong. I want you to see the difference here, right? So notice how he's grouping these together. See, this is why I told people when the dominant white society, or when someone who's against reparations, or someone who is outside the lineage is calling for it to be race-based, there's a reason why they're doing it. They're doing it because they want so badly for it to be race-based so that they could shoot it down in court. Now, here's why I say that. Here's why I say he's intentionally, this actual author here, and this is only an opinion piece, but this author here is intentionally conflating the two. Because the one in California, it is lineage-based. It's not based on race. It's lineage based. It's just that most people who happen to come from here happen to be Black, but it's lineage based. See, Black is a descriptor, but it's not the only requirement. See, it would be the same as what happened in Florida. After what happened with Rosewood, the descendants of Rosewood, they were compensated, and that was Florida. Florida did that. So if Florida did that, yes, it's gonna stand the test, yo, because it was lineage based. It wasn't based on race alone. Let me show you. Rosewood. Let's see. So the families, right? The families of the Rosewood massacre, the descendants of it, they were compensated. The story of the it's a CNN News piece here. The story of the Rosewood massacre lay buried for 70 years, until the state of Florida passed a bill in 1994 to compensate survivors and their descendants. It offered $150,000 to survivors who could prove they owned property during the massacre, and created a scholarship fund for descendants who attended in-state colleges. So once again, this is how that worked in Rosewood. So a lot of us, many of us, right, who saw that, we thought to ourselves it could work the exact same way for a federal reparations program. You know, it would work the exact same way, because not every Black person was compensated for what happened in Rosewood, right? And that's in Levy County in Florida. Not every black person was compensated for that one incident. It was limited to those who could trace their lineage back to those who were there. That makes sense. That's how American laws work. You don't make things race-based to say anyone who is black would just automatically get it, because what would happen is there would be so many legal challenges. And then two, there would be a legitimate claim that it would be too expensive. So that's why this author is conflating the two, because what happened there in Illinois, it is not lineage based. It's not lineage based at all. At all. Because I want you to know something, right? Remember the article that we were just seeing? Illinois. So this whole article is about activist split over whether reparations should go to black immigrants, right? Now, he's mentioning, I want you to see how sneaky some of these people are. And that's why I want to use this particular article. I want you to see how underhanded and how dishonest some people can actually be, right? So he's conflating what's happening in California with the one in Evanston, Illinois, right? And this is actually an opinion piece. But you go back over to the Washington Post piece, and if you go back and you Control F, you type in Illinois, you read this particular piece here, you could see his lie by omission, what he's doing to be intentionally deceptive. A California panel has recommended billions in reparations for its black residents, but it would exclude anyone who cannot trace their lineage in the U.S. back to 1900s. Smaller reparations programs launched by cities in Rhode Island and Illinois have not made a distinction, and black immigrants are able to apply. So once again, see what he did there? He conflated the two. The one in California is not race-based. Because if it were race-based, then everyone who is black would get it. But just like what happened in Rosewood, it's not because you're so much black that you're getting it. It's because of what happened and you being able to trace your lineage. See, the slave masters actually kept books. So we kind of know. Not in every case, but we know a lot of them. See? So people are always pretending that we can't trace our lineage when that's not the case. When that's not the case. See? And I want to see, who is this guy? Can I find out who Horace Cooper is? Who is Horace Cooper? Where is he from? Because see, I know Horace Cooper, the chairman of 21 Project. I want to see something real quick because I'm very curious about Mr. Cooper here. Images. Oh, where is his lineage from? Where? He's a black conservative. Okay, so no wonder he wrote that piece. Where is he from? Mr. Horace Cooper, where are you from? So let's see. Horace Cooper is a senior fellow of the, excuse me, let's add down. Senior fellow at the Heartland Institute. He's also a director of the National Center for Public Policy Research, NCPPR, where he co-chairs Project 21's National Advisory Board. According to his staff profile, Cooper is also an adjunct fellow with the NCPPR and averages over 400 talk radio appearances per year representing Project 21, in addition to regular television appearances and interviews by the print media, also for Project 21. That is fascinating, man. That is, I wonder, where is his lineage from? Where is his lineage? I'm wondering, man, because that is. Where is his lineage from? I'm wondering, man. See, that brother's giving me some Haitian vibes, man. See, he's giving me those freaking vibes, man. He's giving me those freaking vibes, man. I want to know. Let me see. Where is he from? Haiti. This dude, though, I'm telling you. I'm telling you. It is some weird. I'm telling you, it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me. But we're going to get on to the next piece here, man, because I don't want to spend too much time on that dude, man. I don't want to spend too much time with this, on that dude. But this next piece, make sure you guys are sharing the stream because this next piece is going to be huge. There are U.S. politicians who are descendants of slave masters who are going against reparations. I'm going to say it again. There are U.S. politicians who are descendants of slave masters who are going against reparations. I'm going to say that one more again. There are white U.S. politicians who are going against reparations, right? Because they don't want us to get it. And two, they are descendants of slave masters. Now, with that being said, folks, make sure you're sharing the stream. Make sure you share the stream with other people that you know. Give me a quick second. I'm going to give me a little drink. All right. So, all right, folks. So, let's get into this now. Here we go. Had to change up my audio settings there. So, reparations, where slavery's descendants stand. In the U.S. Congress, some of the leading voices on the divisive issue of slavery reparations have an ancestral tie to slaveholding. Man, oh man. All right. I am Swarthy says 118 of them, 3 in the state. Louisiana governors, state reps, Supreme Court justice, and presidents. Absolutely. But we're going to get into this, man, because I was jumping down the diaspora, and I want to let the people in the diaspora know I love you. It's nothing hard, because I'm going to tell you, before I jump on you, I'm going to jump on this. And we got to combine forces to go against white supremacy, because this is white supremacy right before your eyes. Make sure you guys are sharing the stream. Get every person you can in here. Make sure you go to every social media page and you share the stream, because I want to go in for you guys. We got to go in and dissect this slowly, y'all. We got to go in and dissect this slowly. Reparations, where slavery's descendants stand. In the U.S. Congress, some of the leading voices on the divisive issue of slavery reparations have an ancestral tie to slaveholding. Bills introduced in the House and Senate would create a commission to address the fundamental injustice, cruelty, brutality, and the inhumanity of slavery in the U.S. and the 13 American colonies between 1619 and 1865, and the racial and economic discrimination against Black Americans that followed. Such a commission, the bills say, would consider a national apology and proposals for reparations. I don't want a freaking apology. You can keep your apology. I don't want your apology. I don't care how sorry you are about having my folks enslaved and building your generational wealth off of the backs of my people. I don't care how sorry you are. I don't care. Just show me the money. Show my folks the money. Again, people always want to notice how they mention the national apology before they mention proposals for reparations. Again, I don't care about apologies. You can keep your apology because it's not sincere anyways. Right? Some of the leading voices on the matter, both for and against, have a personal connection to the issue. They have one or more ancestors who were slaveholders. Wow. So I want y'all to see something real quick. There are both Democrats and Republicans who have ancestors who are slaveholders. Among them are three prominent Democrats who have co-sponsored reparations bills: Senators Elizabeth Warren and Chris Van Hollen and Representative Lloyd Doggett. Opponents include the opponents who are descendants of slaveholders include Republican Senators Tommy Tuberville and John N. Kennedy and former Representative Louis Gohmert. The issue is divisive, right? The issue is divisive. A Reuters Ipsos survey found that slightly more than half of respondents identifying as Democrats, 58%, support reparations. Just 18% of Republicans do. The divide is even greater between black and white America. The poll found that 74% of black Americans favor reparations compared to just 26% of white Americans. Wow. So there goes your buddies there. But I want you to notice what they decided to highlight here and what they didn't highlight. 58% of Democrats support it, but wouldn't that also mean that 42% of Democrats are against it? Tawana Dobbs, how you doing? I am Swarthy, how you doing? Tony on T. Once again, if they are saying that 58% of Democrats support reparations, wouldn't that also mean that 42% of them don't? Isn't that what that means? So wouldn't that mean that the Democrats have a issue on their hands? Apparently, Democrats have an issue where north of 40% of your base, north of almost half of your base, going on half of your base, is saying that black folks don't need reparations. And yet, almost 3/4 of black Americans do. In fact, I've seen polls from Pew Research Center on polls that says 80% of us do. Not 74%. So wouldn't that mean that Democrats have to actually go through their ranks and say, hey, what's up with all this racism that you have towards black Americans? Why don't you think these people who built the country, why don't you think they should be compensated? They fought in the American Revolutionary War. They fought in the Civil War. The original 13 colonies was largely drawn up off of Moorish land. A lot of people don't know that. They invented so many things. Our banks, our railroads, our major infrastructure built by black Americans, the black natives, the black descendants of the black descendants of American slaves. We're the ones who built all this. So why do you have so many Democrats who are against it? I understand that only 18% of Republicans support it. Granted, that means that Republicans are completely off when it comes to us. But why so many Democrats, though, if they are our allies? Why so many? Don't you find that weird? See, that's the kind of question that Joe Biden doesn't want to answer. See, a House resolution that was introduced in May in favor of the idea cites estimates from respected economists that reparations to eliminate the racial wealth gap would cost at least $14 trillion. Probably more than that. Probably, I'm just going to throw it out there. Proponents say such payments are meant to help compensate for more than slavery itself. They cite systemic racism and other forms of discrimination that followed emancipation. Opponents say that reparations would further divide the country. They question who would get the money. Would all black Americans or only descendants of people who could show their ancestors were enslaved? They also say it's wrong to have taxpayers finance reparations given that no one alive is responsible for slavery. Well, the first question, who would get it? Descendants of slavery. Do you see why it has to be people who could trace their lineage? Because they're using that game. We are removing every excuse. You see how all that stuff I just said earlier, how it all ties in now? See, we were listening to the white supremacists. We know their games. Many people who are black immigrants who are saying, why can't we be included in reparations? You don't understand the white supremacists here. You have fought them in a different land. That does not mean you understand the beast in its current incarnation here. Because I find it weird how people who want to lecture me about this kind of stuff, when I'm talking about new information, they don't even know about it. I mean, they may know about some other history, but they don't know some of the deep struggles here. So just because you fought white supremacy in one instance doesn't mean you know what it's like to fight it here, because you have different people here, different militaries, different types of police, different police funding, different levels of police funding. If, for example, there are people who are in African countries who, if you saw what the American law enforcement can do to you legally, my God. I mean, the incarceration rate here is worse than China. So that lets you know there is a different incarnation of the beast. You have faced the beast in a different form, the same beast. But that does not mean you understand the unique struggles and histories here. Here. You want to know why? Because if you are a black immigrant coming over here, you wouldn't even know that these politicians are descendants of slave masters. You wouldn't even know that. Not necessarily. Most people in America don't know much about their U.S. politicians. So why in the heck would you? Black immigrant? You wouldn't. Not necessarily. I mean, you have less reasons to freaking know than I do. So, again, this is the kind of stuff that we're talking about. In examining the genealogies of members of the 117th Congress, Reuters found that at least 100 lawmakers have direct ancestors who enslaved black people in the years before 1865, the end of the U.S. Civil War. Some have espoused strong positions on reparations, among them the opponents. Louis Gohmert, former U.S. Texas representative. Direct ancestor is Robert Lindsay. Relationship, great-great-great-grandfather. Number of enslaved, 11. I have seen the documents where my great-grandfather signed when he came from Europe in 1870. So this guy is opposing reparations, even though he is acknowledging that his folks had slaves. How can you oppose something knowing your folks had slaves? Wow. As a Republican member of the House Judiciary Committee, Gohmert was one of the most vocal critics of long-standing House Resolution 40, which calls for Congress to form a commission to study reparations. In April of 2021, Gohmert went on the attack by proposing an amendment calling for the Democratic Party to pay for reparations. In the slavery era, the Democratic Party supported slavery. The Republican Party, led by Abraham Lincoln, called for slavery's restriction and eventually abolished it. At the time, Gohmert suggested his own family had no connection to slavery, citing an ancestor who immigrated after the Civil War. Quote, I have seen the documents where my great-grandfather signed when he came from Europe in 1870, end quote, he said. Reuters found that Gohmert has another direct ancestor on his mother's side who enslaved 11 black people in Bowie County, Texas in 1860. Those enslaved by Gohmert's ancestor, Robert Lindsay, ranged in age from a 3-month-old to a 70-year-old man. Wow. Lindsay was a lawyer who shortly before he passed in 1860, chaired a meeting that organized a vigilance committee in the community of Boston in Bowie County. It issued a statement resolving that any white man caught tampering with our slaves to bring about an insurrection would be caught and unalived by the committee. So basically, he was saying that white people, you can't help these slaves. So not only did his ancestor enslave people, he made it illegal to even help them. Goldmer, who joined Congress in 2005 but did not seek re-election last year, told Reuters he wasn't aware of having a slave-holding ancestor. He said, "That surprises me." He declined to comment further. Here is a copy of the Vigilance Committee. So a meeting of the citizens was held at Boston, 27th July. R.M. Lindsay in the chair and B.F. Estes secretary. A vigilance committee of 100 was organized. The following is one of the resolutions adopted. Resolve that any emergency such as finding a white man in suspicious circumstances or discovering in any act or attempt at the commission of a crime such as tampering with our slaves to bring about an insurrection, such as members of said committee to prevent the escape of such offenders should take himself out. Wow. Then, in that case, the people of Bowie County will sustain the members of said committee in such act. So he's saying that if you are on the committee and you actually help a slave, you got to take yourself out, or the people will do it. This stuff goes deep, man. Wow. Dang, yo. So we have some sitting U.S. senators. We have sitting U.S. senators. Tommy Tuberville says they are not owed that. His direct ancestor is Valentine Brazil. In relationship to that ancestor who owned slaves is his great-great-grandfather. Number of enslaved is 5. At a Republican rally in Nevada on last October, Tuberville, an Alabama senator, took aim at Democrats for being soft on crime. In his critique, he veered into the issue of reparations and implied that those who commit crime in America are black. Wow. Wow. Quote, they want crime because they want to take over what you got. They want control. They want to control what you have. They want reparations because they think the people that do the crime are owed that. BS. They are not owed that. Wow. End quote. In a statement to local media about his controversial remarks, Tuberville said in part, quote, the issue is crime, not race, but the liberal media is intent on helping Democrats remain in power, end quote. The statement did not address his claims about reparations. An ancestor of Tuberville, Valentine Brazil, in 1840, enslaved at least 5 black people in Saline County, Arkansas, including 2 boys who were under the age of 10. Wow. Wow. Brazil moved to another county in the state, Ochita, and I hope I said that right. And by the next census count in the 1850 enslaved 3 people between the ages of 17 and 22 years old. Tuberville did not respond to 5 requests for comment. So this man said, and I'm gonna highlight this. They are not owed that. So what was your ancestor owed, Mr. Tuberville? Senator, your ancestor. Not only does this country owe reparations, you should personally pay all of your money, all of your wealth towards helping us do that. Because the argument is, hey, it should come from people who directly benefited. Well, you certainly did, sir. And by the way, you have some nerve talking about the crime that black people supposedly that black Americans who can trace their lineage are supposedly committing when your ancestors were enslavers. How can you come from people who commit the ultimate sin, but then come to us with moral lectures? And by the way, if you want to see who's committing all the crimes, why don't you go over to Florida and Appalachia and go talk to all those Breaking Bads over there? Just saying, man. Another person who's against reparations, who is a U.S. Senator from Louisiana, U.S. Senator John N. Kennedy from Louisiana. His direct ancestor is Nathan Calhoun. The relationship that he has to this slave owning ancestor is that was his great 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 grandfather. And Nathan Calhoun had 65 slaves. Quote, I just don't think anyone today is responsible for what someone did 150 years ago, end quote. Sir, that is your ancestor. Nathan Calhoun. In 2019, a reporter asked Kennedy, a Republican senator from Louisiana, about his thoughts on reparations. He said that slavery was reprehensible. I believe in personal responsibility, and I just don't think anyone today is responsible for what someone else did 150 years ago. Sir, that someone else is one of your folks. That's your mans. That's your mans, man. That's directly your mans. Kennedy is a direct descendant of a man named Nathan Calhoun, his mans, who in 1860 enslaved 65 people. They lived in 14 slave houses on a farm in Abbeville, South Carolina, my home state. Nathan Calhoun's son, Dabney P. Calhoun, enslaved 22 people that same year in Louisiana. Kennedy did not respond to 5 requests for comment. So these are the 3 people who we can directly see. Just 3 examples. There are many more. Just 3 examples of people who are against it. Now, here's your Democratic allies here, right? Elizabeth Warren, who lied about being Native American. Elizabeth Warren, her slave these are all the people who are proposing reparations, but they are still descendants of slave masters. Elizabeth Warren, U.S. Senator from Massachusetts. Her direct slave-owning ancestor is John Crawford, who is her great-great-great-grandfather. He owned 14 slaves. Quote, the legacy of slavery still casts a long shadow over every facet of American life, including Congress, end quote. Yeah, because you're here, Elizabeth Warren. Warren, a Massachusetts Democrat, is a co-sponsor of S-40, the Senate reparations bill. In an 1848 will, a Warren ancestor named John Crawford bequeathed the 14 men, women, and children enslaved in Dorchester County, Maryland. For 12 of them, ranging from the age of 4 months old to 28 years old, Crawford specified that each female would be free at age 31 and each male at 36. For 2 other men named in the document, Crawford wrote they would be slaves for life. Wow. Quote, the legacy of slavery still casts a long shadow over every facet of American life, including Congress. While we cannot change the past, I am fighting in the Senate to address systemic injustices through word, deed, law, and policy. Let's talk about another person here. Chris Van Hollen, U.S. Senator out of Maryland. His direct slave-owning ancestor was Isaac Hollingsworth, who is his great-great-great-great-grandfather, who owned 16 slaves. Quote, we have a moral imperative to confront the legacy and impact of our nation's original sin, end quote. Another co-sponsor of the Senate reparations measure is Van Hollen, a Democrat representing Maryland. In 1840, his ancestor enslaved 16 people in Virginia. Lloyd Doggett, U.S. representative from Texas, whose slave-owning ancestor is Miller Doggett. Wow, same last name. And the relationship that he has with this slave-owning ancestor is that was his great-great-great-great-grandfather, who owned 3 people. So as you can see, the legacy of slavery not only affected us in the past, it still affects us even now by who we put in office, by the people who support it and the people who are against it. The people who support it and the people who are against it. We have some new faces here. We have D. Clax. What's going on, my brother? God's Joy. What's going on, God's Joy? What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the broadcast. Welcome to Black People Kind of News. This is the kind of news that I want to do for you guys. Issues that affect Black America, but also the diaspora. Now, I discuss things from a Black American perspective, but that's because I live here. But if there's issues in the diaspora that you want me to discuss, I'll do that too. But this issue is a pressing issue for my lineage and my people. Shots on all targets. What's going on? B1. How you doing? How you doing? Much love, salute. I want to continue the show, man. I want to wrap this up within like an hour, but I want to continue the show because I want to continue this for you guys. So this may be a marathon, man. This may be a marathon. This may be a marathon because we started out the show with discussing, right, the fact that some people are split over whether reparations should go over to black immigrants. And I'm going to tell you, black descendants of American slaves, we're not split. We are all in agreement. It should be lineage based. But I want you to see how deceptive some people are, right? I want to show you this example one more time, right? I want to show you this particular example, how deceptive some people can be. And you would only notice this if you work in the media. See, I'm actually a card-carrying journalist, so I want you to see something, right? So I want you to see how deceptive some people can be. So this is a... Now, where's that particular article? I want to show you, I want to talk about race-based reparations here for a second. So this article was written by this guy here, Horace Cooper, right? And he's talking about race-based reparations and how it's illegal because of what happened with affirmative action, right? So I want you to take this part because it's actually an opinion piece. It's not based in any hardcore legal reactions, any kind of like legal ramifications, but I want you to see how deceptive people can be. First of all, Horace Cooper is a black conservative, and he's a hardcore right-winger who's against reparations in the first place. So he's one of the few black conservatives who's actually against reparations, because most, even most black conservatives is for it, or are actually for it. And I'm going to actually show that poll too from the Pew Research Center, right? But I want you to see how deceptive some people can be, right? So he's saying here, that means that a government-funded reparations policy would use race to the detriment of some and the benefit of others. Whether that policy proposes paying $1.2 million per recipient, such as the plan that California has been considering, or the $25,000 per black resident that Evanston, Illinois agreed to pay last month. It is a clear violation, that's not true, of Roberts' orders and rules and the principle of ensuring colorblind laws and government programs. Now, I already showed how that's incorrect now, but I'm going to show that. I'm going to show you from the facts why that is so deceptive. Because the very title of this article shows you why that is deceptive. Because the plan, the reparations plan in Illinois is not lineage based. The one in California is. So I want you to see that real quick. So I'm gonna press Control F and press Illinois. I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna highlight that. So a California panel has recommended billions in reparations for its black residents, but it would exclude anyone who cannot trace their lineage in the U.S. back to 1900s, right? Smaller reparations programs launched by cities in Rhode Island and Illinois, such as the one in Evanston, have not made a distinction, and black immigrants are able to apply. So do you see the lie by omission here when this guy came back here and said, I'm going to highlight that one more time. I want you to see the lie by omission. See, that means that a government-funded reparations policy would use race to the detriment of some and the benefit of others. Rather, the policy proposes paying $1.2 million per recipient, such as the plan California has been considering, or the $25,000 per resident that Evanston, Illinois agreed to pay last month. That's not the same thing. One is lineage-based, the other is not. Because if that were not the case, why would we have articles like this? See, People know reparations are coming, so they have to engage in lies by omission like that. And you wouldn't catch that unless you're watching programs like this, or you're watching a Tariq Nasheed or Professor Black Truth. Again, it doesn't matter if I agree or disagree or we have our own beefs, our own squabbles. You have to be watching someone like us, one of us, somebody, to get the actual news, to actually get things broken down like this. Because many people would actually miss stuff like that. They would miss stuff like that. But see, I work in the media, so I know that people engage in lies by omission, man. Happens all the time. Happens all the time. And now, since Biden hasn't been talking about reparations, now he's trying to appease us. Have y'all seen this nonsense? Biden will establish a national monument for Emmett Till because of what happened to him in 1955. So once again, this is the equivalent of Joe Biden giving us another MLK Boulevard. Again, glad it happened. Guys, look, slow clap. Slow clap. Wow. Another monument. But what does that do to bring justice to that family? Because Joe Biden, both Carolyn Bryant and yourself were both alive, whereas you could have brought some federal charges on that white supremacist, and you chose not to. And we're going to get into some of the reasons why you might not have done that. You could have done that, yet you chose not to. So why in the world do you think a national monument? Why do you think Black America even cares about that? We know what happened to Emmett Till. We found the woman who was responsible, and you did nothing, Joe Biden. You still won't give us an anti-Black hate crime bill so that you can prevent the next Emmett Till. President Joe Biden will establish a national monument honoring Emmett Till, the Black teenager from Chicago who was abducted and taken out in 1955 after he was accused of whistling at a white woman in Mississippi, and his mother, a White House official, said. Wow. So he's doing a monument to Emmett Till and his mother, Mamie Till. Biden will sign a proclamation on Tuesday to create the Emmett Till and Mamie Till Mobley National Monument across three sites in Illinois and Mississippi, according to the official. The individual spoke on condition of anonymity because the White House had not formally announced the president's plans. Tuesday is the anniversary of Emmett Till's birth in 1941. The monument will protect places that are central to the story of Till's life and what happened to him at age 14. The acquittal of the white people who did it to him and his mother's activism. Till's mother's insistence on an open casket to show the world how her son had been brutalized, and Jet Magazine's decision to publish photos of what happened to Emmett Till helped galvanize the civil rights movement. In fact, what Mamie Till did was one of the most important things to Black empowerment in this country. Not just in this country, but I would say internationally. For the entire diaspora. Many people criticize her for doing it, but she had to do that. It was brutal, it was gruesome, but it put a face on things. See, people could ignore stuff. You couldn't ignore that. You couldn't look away from that. That's why I say Mamie Till, put some respect on her name. I don't know if I could have done it, but I know why she did it. And the fact that Joe Biden is giving us empty justice instead of an anti-Black hate crime bill. If you wanted to honor Emmett Till, how about on his birthday, you give us an anti-Black hate crime bill. You do an executive order. You do it right now. Instead of giving us a monument, you make sure that there can't be another Emmett Till. If your goal is to make sure that no other Emmett Tills can occur in this country, you pass an anti-Black hate crime bill and you make the penalties for even looking at a Black person wrong, you make it stiff. You make it where there is no special program you can go, no pre-trial diversion that you can go through to avoid charges. See, that's how you would honor Emmett Till. That's how you would make the memory of Emmett Till stick, because that would mean that everyone who would be harmed, who's a black person going forward, they would be punished in memory of Emmett Till. But instead of doing that, you give us the equivalent of an MLK Boulevard. Let's read some comments here. Shots on all targets says B1. What's going on, brother? Also, I don't know how to pronounce your name there. Factual data. Oil Goat says real talk, 100%, absolutely. D Clack says as stiff as he wrote the punishment in the 94 crime bill, absolutely. Donnell Walker 156 says 100%. What's going on? What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for tuning into the broadcast, guys. I'm going to discuss the reason why Joe Biden is in hot water. I want to just discuss some things. This is from Fox News. I want you to see something real quick. Biden blowing off black voters. Reparations activists say the president needs to act. Exactly. Because for the longest time, the Democrats have taken our votes for granted. President Biden is taking black voters for granted and losing their support by remaining silent on and not talking and not backing reparations for black Americans as a way to make amends for slavery and racism, according to a pro-reparations activist who spoke to Fox News Digital. Quote, I believe the Biden administration's stance is emblematic of the Democratic Party's benign neglect of black voters, ADOS, American descendants of slavery voters, more specifically, end quote, said Yvette Carnell, president of the ADOS Advocacy the ADOS Advocacy Foundation. Now, a lot of people who identify as FBA and Yvette Carnell, they are going at each other. But so long as Yvette Carnell is talking like this, I'm not gonna go at her. Because first of all, she went on Fox News talking about reparations and criticizing Joe Biden, saying that, hey, pay us. You know what? I can rock with that. I don't care if you agree or I don't care if you agree or disagree with her. You have to respect the fact that she's stomping for that. I can respect it. Now, I want her to get the lineage thing a little bit more concrete. However, the bottom line is, in this moment, we must support her because she went on Fox Digital talking about reparations and pushing reparations and demanding that Joe Biden force reparations to happen. Hey, I can rock with that. I can rock with that. I can rock with that. I can agree with Tariq Nasheed and Yvette Carnell at the same time. Because both of them are talking about money. As the saying goes, if it don't make dollars, it definitely don't make sense. And they talk about money right now. Quote, black voters are whipped into a frenzy around election time, and Republicans are made into boogeymen who, as Biden himself said back in 2012, want to put y'all back in chains. It's fear-mongering rather than offering a reparations framework or a transformative black agenda that we can actually get excited about, end quote. You know what? I can rock with that. She's right. Listen, I agree. There are some things that she has said that I find questionable too. However, there's a lot of things that people said who are FBA who I don't agree with sometimes. However, what she just said just now, that's the truth. Joe Biden is like a slave master who doesn't want to pay us reparations, but has no problems with us being subjected to slave labor via the 14th Amendment, via the 13th Amendment, because the 13th Amendment allows slavery in the condition of incarceration. So that's why Joe Biden had no problem with the 94 crime bill. That's why he wrote it. See, let me explain something to you. Let me explain something to you. I show this a lot in streams, but I want you guys to see this, right? So the framework for the 94 crime bill was S1241, the Biden-Thurman Violent Crime Control Act of 1991. Right? So why is it called the Biden-Thurman Violent Crime Control Act? Because the person who was on the bill with him was Senator Strom Thurmond, one of the most racist politicians in American history. Now, don't you find it interesting? He wrote that bill, then Joe Biden was actually a hardcore racist who was against integration via school busing and black kids going to the same schools as white kids. In the summer of 1974, the freshman senator Joe Biden found himself under siege from white suburbanites at a meeting just south of Wilmington, Delaware. The possibility that their children would be bused into black schools in the city and that black children would be bused into their schools had sent a wave of consternation through the white community. Wow. Civil rights activists had recently won a lawsuit in which a federal district court recognized that state-sponsored discriminatory education and housing policies had led to segregated metropolitan area schools. The court was then poised to demand a two-way busing program that would transfer students between the city and suburban districts to advance racial balance. For 2 hours, Biden paced the auditorium stage and absorbed the ire of the 250-member audience, unable to suffer them any assurance on the court ruling. He made a promise to oppose busing when he returned to Washington and for the next legislative session, and he did. Biden spent the next 4 years pushing legislation to thwart the implementation of busing schemes like the one demanded by the courts in Wilmington around the country. So basically, he wrote bills that stopped black kids from riding on the bus with white kids, and he stopped black kids from going to schools with white kids because his northern white constituents in Wilmington, Delaware, in case all of you who suddenly believe that the North isn't just as racist, all of his white constituents from Wilmington, Delaware, a northern blue Democrat state, they didn't want their kids going to schools with black children. So he acted on behalf of his white supremacist constituents, and he made sure that black children could not go to school with white children, and vice versa. That's the legacy of Joe Biden and his crime bill. That was based on the 1991 Violent Crime Control Act, S1241. That was the Biden-Thurman, the Joe Biden Strom Thurmond Violent Crime Control Act. That was the precursor to the 94 Control Act. Right? And the way that we know this, Biden-Thurman Violent Crime Control Act of 1991, titled Safer Streets and Neighborhoods. Safer Streets and Neighborhoods Act of 1991 amends the Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act of 1991, Omnibus Act to 1. Authorize appropriations. Wow. Look at all that money. $1 billion for fiscal year 1992 and such sums as necessary in fiscal year 1993 and 1994. And 1994. Oh, So it was in fact the precursor to the 94 crime, the freaking 94 Crime Act, just like I said it was. Because the funding that partially funded the freaking 94 Violent Crime Control Act came from here. It was the framework. A lot of the things you find in the 94 crime bill, you find similar stuff here. And the reason why it targeted disproportionately black people, one of the people who wrote this 91 Violent Crime Control Act was Strom Thurmond. Do you understand how racist Strom Thurmond is? I always show this. Strom Thurmond, filibuster, Civil Rights Act. Did you know that we could have had a Civil Rights Act back in the 50s? Did you know that? Senate.gov. Civil rights filibuster ended. June 10th. This is actually Senate.gov, the U.S. Senate website, the government website. Here we go. June 10th, 1964. At 9:51 on the morning of June 10th, 1964, Senator Robert C. Byrd completed an address that he had begun 14 hours and 13 minutes earlier. The subject was the pending Civil Rights Act of 1964, a measure that occupied the Senate for 60 working days, including 7 Saturdays. A day earlier, Senate whips Hubert Humphrey, Democrat in Minnesota, and Thomas Kuchel, Republican of California, the bill's floor managers, concluded that they had the votes required at the time to end the debate. The Civil Rights Act provided protection of voting rights, banned discrimination in public facilities, including private businesses offering public services such as lunch counters, hotels, and theaters, and established also establish equal employment opportunity as the law of the land, right? So that happened. But I want you to see what happened before that. Now that was 64. Here's the one in 57. Now, I want you to compare the two. The one in 64 was only met with 14 hours and some change. This one set a record. This man set a record. It was a full 24 hours and some change. Congressional record. Proceedings and debates of the 85th Congress First Session, Volume 103, Part 12. August 27th, 1957 to August 30th, 1957. So, this is the actual record of Strom Thurmond. So, I want to see if I can control that. Here's one here. Here's a little quote here. Mr. Thurmond, Mr. President, I rise to speak against the so-called Voting Rights Bill, H.R. 6127, which bill was passed by the House of Representatives. It came to the Senate without being referred to the committee and was placed on the Senate calendar, which is something unusual and out of the ordinary procedure. The bill was then amended by the Senate and returned to the House, after which time the House amended it again by adopting what was called a compromise. The compromise, as well as the bill, is entirely unreasonable, and I hope that the Senate will not pass the bill. So that is a direct quote from Strom Thurmond, the man that Joe Biden called his friend. I want you to see this. Joe Biden, Strom Thurmond, friend. For Joe Biden, friendship is magic. His praise of white supremacists is not a blunder, but a key to his clubby worldview. Interesting. So I want you to say something real quick. So let's look up Strom Thurmond. Strom. For Biden, I want you to see this quick. For Biden, one-on-one relationships are the essence of life and politics. In his 2003 eulogy for the famously racist Senator Strom Thurmond, Biden said that friendship and unaliving are great equalizers, where our differences become irrelevant and the only thing that is left is what's in our heart. Oh, that's one quote. Let's see if we got some more. Joe Biden. There we go. Strom Thurmond friends. On crime, Biden worked closely with his segregationist friends. Oh. There are two storylines about Joe Biden's long Senate record that are potentially dangerous for him, in that they could threaten his currently strong support among African Americans. One involves his friendships with segregationists in the Senate, notably James Eastland, Strom Thurmond, and Herman Talmadge, which he can't seem to stop thinking about. And the other is his responsibility for policies that have led to mass incarceration, including the landmark 1994 crime bill. What could be happening now is that the two stories are converging, as reflected in a New York Times report on how Biden worked closely with his racist colleagues to push crime policy through mandatory minimum sentences and other get tough positions long before the 1994 crime bill. Mr. Biden finally landed a seat on the Judiciary Panel in the Judiciary Panel in February of 1977, and wrote to Mr. Eastland again, petitioning to be put in charge of the subcommittee overseeing prisons and sentencing. By year's end, with Mr. Eastland's support, he was pushing to narrow judicial discretion by creating a commission to set presumptive sentences and to eliminate pardons and parole. His aim, he told his hometown newspaper, the Wilmington Evening Journal, was to keep defendants who don't meet the middle class criteria of susceptibility to rehabilitation from being set free. So the people who are not middle class, do you understand what a dog whistle is? He's saying black people. He's saying black people. That's what he's saying. Make no mistake about it. He's saying black people. Make no mistake about it. He's saying black people. Make no mistake about it. He's saying black people. That's what Joe Biden meant. In 1981, when Democrats lost the Senate, Republicans installed another old bull Southern segregationist as chairman, Mr. Strom Thurmond, a Democrat turned Republican from South Carolina who had run for president in 1948 on the Dixiecrat platform. Mr. Biden became the ranking Democrat on the committee. Over the next decade, first with Mr. Thurmond as chairman, and then Mr. Biden after Democrats won back the Senate in 1986. The pair wrote roughly a half a dozen crime bills together, laying the groundwork for three of the most significant pieces of crime legislation of the 20th century. Just like I was telling you. So notice how the whole time I was telling you about the Violent Crime Control Act that I was showing you here, right? Here's the framework of the 94 crime bill. Notice how I spent all that time saying that, and I guarantee you all the Biden shields, all the Democratic shields, they were saying he's lying, he's making it up, and now you're seeing it in black and white, in black and white, in black and white, right? That is Joe Biden. That is Joe Biden. He's not a fan of black people. He's not a champion for black people. He hates black people. This idea that he ever cared about us, to borrow a phrase from Joe Biden, that's malarkey.